All right, and we're live. So welcome, 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 Heller Barnes, and we have a killer guest today. Max is with us, and
Where? Oh, me.
oh yeah, and Johnny was out feeling. A matter of fact, Heller never misses. I should just say that he's always. But last week was really under the weather. So Johnny, how you feeling this week? I hope you're
I'm
holding a
I'm
whole
all
lot better.
I'm all better, thanks a lot. I appreciate, all the cards, letters, and well wishes. Wait, okay, no one sent a damn thing. Um, no one cares. Um, but I'm better. I had a cold and it led to vertigo, which I've never really had that without drinking my way toward there. So it was weird. But you're dizzy and you think you're gonna fall down all the time.
Never had it.
So, but I did not fall down, and I took some medicine, which cleared it up right away, and Joanna was absolutely wonderful to me. But it's really I've never had that. I've never had where you just every time you get up, you just think you're gonna fall down. It's weird. And apparently, it's an inner ear thing. I don't
Mm.
know what some virus affected it, which made me woozy. But now I'm not. Now I'm just typically stupid, not medicinally stupid.
I think that goes with being so young. I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
you know.
Ain't you sweet? Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And here we have our dear friend Max Zener. Who I might there's your wife keeps sending me apartments, you know that? She wants you to move next to you
I
there.
know, I know. We keep trying to get you up here.
Yeah, well, there's one that I really like, but I don't know if they're dog friendly, and I'm dog friendly, so
Yeah.
I don't know which dog to leave behind. So
So are you
Sophie's
two
choice.
relatively close to each other in New York?
well, about 110 blocks.
Yeah. So in reality, we're very close compared to where most people live. But in New York, if you're, 10 blocks away from somebody, that's
Yeah, yeah.
another state. It might as well
Max is in
be.
the 180s and
Yeah,
I'm
we're
in the
very
70s.
parochial here in New York City.
Yeah, yeah, but I'll tell you what, this Max is one of my dear friends. Joanna and I had a lovely, dinner at his house, yeah, it was about a few months ago now,
Yeah.
but it was great. We've gone to shows together, and, we've known each other for quite a long time. We were discussing
Yeah.
actually just before we opened the show. Max is one of the fellows I met when I, was employed for a while by Edge Studio.
Yeah, way back then.
I met some great people there, and I thought I'd met him elsewhere, but that's where I met him, but we've been, close since. We've done many fine things together, many dinners together.
Yeah.
Max and I enjoy a fine steak. So,
Well, that's weird. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
crazy, right?
Yeah.
What's that about?
okay. So how did you guys how'd you cross paths in terms of this business?
Max was a student, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And this was
So
3 months ago?
Oh,
yes. Yeah, yeah. Just
yeah.
just last year. No, gosh, this must have been I think I've been
Max had,
doing this
bright
for
red hair in those days, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've been doing this for, like, 8 years, I think,
Yeah, so it's gotta be almost
and
a
it was
decade that we met,
yeah,
yeah,
and I met you right when I was starting, like, one of the
yeah.
first things I did was to go to that class.
And this was your first acting gig, correct?
Yeah, no, I started, I you know, I started acting when I was in elementary school, like, my 3rd grade teacher was like, I think this would be good for him, and talked my parents into, sending me to audition for a show at the Chevy Chase Community Theater in the suburbs of DC. And, I got the part and had a great time, and,
Do you remember the show?
Finishing Touches by Gene Kerr. It needed, like, a nine-year-old smart-ass kid, and I was a nine-year-old smart-ass kid, so it worked out well.
So you weren't
Um,
typecast?
no, not at all.
No.
And, stayed a theater kid, but didn't think about it professionally, um, until I was almost done with college. I was on track to being a, research scientist. I had a biology degree and a job at NIH and the whole thing, and, I realized I hated doing science. Like, I loved learning about science, but I hated doing it, and one day, the telephone in the lab rings, and I pick it up, it's my buddies who are like, "Hey, we're going to go see this play tonight. Do you wanna come along?" And the clouds parted, and the lights shone down, and the angel choir sang, and I was like, "I had it backwards. I'm happy to keep learning about science as a hobby, but acting is what I wanna do with my life."
Oh, it's
how
like
did
Saul
you?
on
And
the
I've been
road
doing it
guitar
ever
scene.
since.
Yeah.
But how
Yeah.
did you
Very.
transition then? So that meant you just threw away your job and started hanging out outside the theaters?
Well, I, I crammed in my remaining time, I crammed in a theater degree at college, and, yeah, I submitted myself to an internship at the Williamstown Theater Festival, which I got, and, I, uh, I graduated by surprise, which is a whole other story. I thought I was gonna need some extra time, and then the theater department was very kindly like, "Wait a minute, we can give you credit for this show you did, and this show you did, and this show you did, and this show you did, and, your work on that show was good enough, we'll call that your senior project. Boom, you're graduated." And I was like, "That's great."
Wow, they wanted you out, didn't
I
they?
know, they wanted to be rid of me. Um, so I was like, "What do I
Yeah,
do?"
normally we don't do this for freshmen, but
Yeah.
here you go.
Um,
Excuse me.
so, I grew up in and around DC. That's sort of where my whole support system was. So I went back down there and started auditioning for theaters, and I wound up getting a lot of work actually in children's theater. Was my first steady stream of professional employment. Was a couple of children's theaters down in the DC area.
That's how
Yeah.
I got my equity card as well, because I started in equity, and it was children's theater. I mean, and you don't realize I started Paul Allen Rubin and I got our start at the same children's theater a few years
No
apart.
kidding.
Yeah.
Okay,
Um,
for those of us that are ignorant, what's children's? What do you mean children's theater?
Well,
This
do
is
you
how
know
ignorant I
children? Do
am.
you know what children are?
that's right.
No,
Yeah,
I
you ever
don't.
seen a kid?
My kids are all adults. So what would I know about children?
Yeah, yeah, children's theater is basically it is in at least in equity shows, union shows, there's shows that are put on generally in the day, and
Mhm.
parents bring their children. It's like
Mhm.
Sleeping Beauty, and there's always the shows about princes and things, and
Okay,
pirates and
so it's not
Yeah.
50 Shades of Grey type stuff. Is that what I'm hearing?
and
No, no, no,
no.
that's what happens in the dressing room because you
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
do it, you can't
that's
bring that stuff on stage.
yeah.
I have
That's called
never met
cast party. Yeah.
never met the most like, the most foul-mouthed people I've ever met have been children's theater actors
Oh,
because
yeah.
you have to repress it when you're on stage. It has to leak out in the rest of your life. No, but I loved children's theater. I really did because the man, kids as an audience, there's no more viscerally honest audience that you will
Yeah.
ever get. When
Yeah,
they
yeah.
are into a show, they are into it and they're cheering and they're jumping up out of their seat and they're hollering. And when they are bored, they
They
let
are
you
bored. Yeah, yeah.
know. None of this like polite silence, no matter
But
whether
they're
it's good or bad.
when they're
They let you
involved, it's
know.
so wonderful because they're like, "Look out behind you," and they yell things to you, and they support the good guys, hate the
Yeah.
bad guys. It's really it is charming and wonderful, and there's so much you learn so much because either it's a big production and like a dinner theater during the daytime, so it's a million people in schools come and things, but then sometimes I did one thing, in Chicagoland, we did, for Goodman Theater, we did tours of, just 3 of us we did, Huck Finn
Hmm.
and Tom Sawyer,
Hmm.
and we had a high school show and an elementary school show, a little different, and but we created the set just using like a big wash tin and a
Yeah.
stick and a sheet, and
Yeah.
it's just if you believe here's something that I always liked, when you believe that this sheet, it's a white sheet, was either a
Hmm.
fence or a boat or whatever you chose to make it, as long as you believed it,
Yeah.
so did they.
Yeah, kid, they, uh, yeah,
And by the way, I do see
spark their imagination and they run.
I
Yeah.
see a question from Clara Burgee. We're gonna get to that in just a second, Claire. We're gonna keep chatting a few minutes with Max, get to know him, and then we'll come right back to your question. I know the show's called Ask Us Anything, but we don't really mean that.
Don't actually ask.
Yeah, yeah. Shut up, Claire. No, we'll get right to it.
So after children's theater, what did you do? Where did you go after that? You go to young adult theater, or what's
Right,
next?
and you gradually go up, and you have this tween theater, and then
Now
there's
we're doing senior citizen
yeah.
people. We're
No,
yelling Shakespeare at people. Yeah.
I, my then girlfriend, now wife, Emmy, she, got into social work school in New York City. And, I had been thinking about moving to New York, and I took that as my sign. So in 1998, we, uh, sold the car and packed everything up and moved up here.
From where?
Washington, D.C.
Oh, that's right, DC, that's right.
Yeah.
And then they just
And
welcomed you in and said, "You're gonna be our
Oh,
star."
yeah,
Is
it's
that how it
famously
works?
everybody who moves to New York as an actor, you're met with, open arms,
yeah, yeah.
and, you actually you
Usually it's
get a contract as a series regular on Law& and Order just right at the border. They
yeah,
hand
yeah,
those
yeah,
out.
yeah, usually you only need 1 or 2 nights, behind the at a bar,
Yeah,
working behind the stick, and then basically you're in.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, just, you you work and you network and you, meet people and you audition and you try to, you know, get a reputation as a good solid guy, and you
Well,
hope for
you also
some
have
good
a
luck.
wonderful look, Max. You have a great I mean, I can see you as a lawyer or a
Oh,
judge on
thanks.
Law& and Order. You know, if you're a casting person, I see you, and there's an immediate feel one gets, and I think if you look at Don or me, you can't peg us quite that way, you're not sure. But you have I mean, I could see you in almost any legal drama at all.
Works
Well,
for me.
what did you play in, you and Miss Maisel? What I know you didn't have a few days here and there. What'd you do on that one?
Oh, yeah, Miss Maisel, I was I was I was, a guest on the rheumatoid arthritis telethon.
I remember that one. I
Yeah,
remember that.
yeah,
Let's go back and look
yeah,
at it.
That
yeah,
flows
and
off
boy,
the
that
tongue
was I
well.
mean, that day, like, I felt like I was going to school.
Was
Like,
it a one-day shoot?
it was a one-day shoot, and, it was 3 of us co-stars opposite Jane Lynch, and, like, I got paid to go to school, like, watching her work. It was we were I'm guessing based on my call time and when they actually took me to set, I think we were, like, running, like, 2 hours late, and when a TV show runs late, people are getting touchy. 'Cause once you pass that 8-hour mark, all the union folks are making time and a half, and the producers are bleeding money, so, like, everybody's a little touchy, and, uh, they only gave me, like, a very partial script. I only had, like, the pages of my lines, but even in there, I could tell that it was, like, a big moment in the season. It was where Jane Lynch's character, the people in this telethon were telling these horrible stories of how rheumatoid arthritis had destroyed their lives, and the script said it was just a little paragraph all on its own. Jane Lynch's character, what did it say? It said, "She tries to have a human reaction. She cannot. It is awful to watch." That's all it said. And and it was really like, "Here you go, Ms. Lynch, just go be brilliant, please. And by the way, we're on the clock, and if you don't get it right, the arc of the season falls apart, so no
Yeah,
pressure."
yeah,
It's the sort of thing where it's like a recipe for actors to get in their heads, and start questioning themselves and doubting themselves and all that. And just watching her navigate it, watching her, between takes, thinking about and experimenting with what she was going to do, but not overdoing it so that it could still be fresh for the camera. And and also clearly having the idea that it was her job to make strong choices and do them. And then
yeah,
it was the director's job and the editor's job to take those takes and put it together. That she wasn't worried about whether she was gonna succeed on any given take. It was just her job to make a choice and do it. And then next take, make a different choice and do that one. And next take, make a different choice and do that one. And, like, that was man, that was an education watching her
yeah.
do that.
That's great you got to be part of that. I've always found, 'cause as we do this career, we find ourselves in audiobooks or in commercial voiceover or in e-learning or something. But a lot of I did a lot of, on-camera commercials for a chunk of my career.
Mhm.
And then I discovered if you signed up to be an extra in a commercial, not an extra in a movie, that's not really great money, but an extra in a union commercial is pretty good money for doing and the most money I think I ever made on one job in this overall industry, Joanna and I were both cast as extras in some commercial in upstate New York. So you drive up there, and it's pretty early call. You drive up there, we're there all day, and then for some reason, we're in a small town. It's just a small town. I forgot what it was even for, but we're there all day, and we're in all these different scenes. We're in some diner, and we're shooting breeze, and then we're outdoors, and then there's some. They gave us smoke pay because they had to have this. It wasn't dry ice, just some kind of smoke thing. There's some sort of hazard, so you
Right.
got more money for that. and then it rained, so we got some kind of rain pay, and then they took everybody home, but forgot me, Joanna, and one other person, just forgot us.
Oh,
And we're
no.
there, and we're at least 2 hours out of New York, so we're there, just sitting around.
Uh-huh.
So it ended up being it went into golden what the hell they call it?
Right.
Golden and a half until,
Uh-huh.
king threw yeah, I made more than Musk. It was crazy. It was crazy good money just because they forgot to take us home. I thought the most money I made as an actor was being forgotten on set.
Now, so when you get a part like that, does that change the trajectory of the next part you go after?
Um, Not really.
No?
No. I mean, some roles can do that, sure, but,
And well,
but, you know.
I know before you did that one, I'm looking at your IMDb here. There's one
Mhm.
I think it's called Boardwalk Empire.
Boardwalk Empire,
And what was
yeah.
that about? I mean, how was that
Oh
experience?
god, that was, another amazing day on set. Actually, a lesson that I try to carry with me, I mean, every time I'm in front of a camera or in front of a mic, because we were in this massive, outdoor space, and they set us little co-star people got these chairs far, far away from everything, but there were all these kids on set, and their parents took over the co-star chairs. And I was like, "Well, I could either make a fuss and be like, 'Get out of my chair. I'm an actor with a chair.'" Um, but I was like, you know what I can do is I can go someplace else that's maybe a little closer to set, and I can watch people work until they kick me out." And I found a spot to stand where I was out of the way, and I could see, like, over there, like, maybe 40 feet away was where Steve Buscemi was doing his thing, and then over there was Video Village, was that little the canopy where they put up all the monitors and the director and everybody is watching that. And I was watching Steve Buscemi and I was thinking like, man, I thought he was a good actor. He's so boring. This is me seeing him in person 40 feet away. I was like, there's nothing going on. That's boring. And then I looked over at the screen and every single thought and emotion that his character was having was just dancing through his eyes, like he was so alive and so present. And then I looked over there, nothing. I looked over there, the whole universe happening. And I was like, that's what people mean when they say, let the camera do its job.
Yep.
Let the camera
That's
come
also what
to
they mean,
you and find your performance. And like, I
and
think
it's
about
also the
that.
less is more idea.
Yeah. But I think about that with the mic too, that like, that like, just it's gonna come find you. Just have it, just do it,
Okay.
and let it come find you.
Here's the thing. It's going to come find you when you and Johnny have done 4,000 hours of theater work,
Oh,
and then
you have to
see.
have something to come find.
Okay. Yeah,
There's no
I just
question
wanna
to
make it
that.
clear, it just doesn't
Yeah,
find
yeah, yeah.
by the way, it's never found me, okay? But I haven't put in the homework in that area.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah,
I just wanna make sure that somebody new doesn't think, "Oh, well, I don't have to do a thing because the camera's going to find me." It ain't gonna happen.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
yeah.
you put in the work. How long before you went and did that had you been acting, roughly?
Oh
3
gosh,
weeks? 6 months?
yeah, yeah, just that morning, actually, they pulled me off the
Okay.
street. No, I I mean, since I was a kid, so it would have been, it would have been,
Multiple decades.
yeah, like, probably 25, 26
Okay.
years at that
Okay.
point.
So I just for people that are newer, um, you're just going to find over and over again when you find people that have a wealth of experience and then they're still learning. They're still
Mhm.
finding things that make sense and that they can apply. I mean, and how does all that on camera work apply? What's different when you're on mic now working an audiobook compared to when you're on camera and now the camera. By the way, the camera probably doesn't find you while you're working your audiobook, but what do you take
No.
away from the acting experience?
Oh gosh. Well, I find acting work, film acting work and voice acting work to be very similar, in that, your performance has to be fully alive and fully invested and fully realized. But unlike stage, where, you gotta communicate that performance to somebody who's, maybe shoot 'em, if it's a big theater, they might be, like, 50 yards away from you. Um, but
Most mics are closer, aren't they?
yeah, like, I've gotta get it this far away, that it's, I have to be big and full, and for there are moments that require you to be big and really emotionally connected and invested, but the microphone is gonna come find it. So I have to live it and inhabit it fully, and it doesn't have to get past here. So it's not less is more. It's not do little. You have to be fully invested, but you don't have to push it out anywhere.
Cool.
You have to recognize the lack of a proscenium arch and the lack
Mhm.
of a live audience,
Yeah.
and trust, people don't understand the microphone and how to use it in a way that really can help your performance. It's right there. The way we're talking right now, no one's raising their voice. This is the kind of level we gotta be at, which is so different than theater,
Yeah.
which is a whole but so it's I mean, it's their things are much it's just different. It's a different world, a different style of acting. But I will say, having worked with you over the years, I find that you've grown so much in so many ways, particularly in the audiobook
Thanks.
world, because
Thanks.
that's where the world we mostly inhabit
Yeah.
anyway. And you and I have chatted about this in our
Mhm.
experiences on stage and in film things have really helped hone our craft as audiobook narrators too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a learning process. And a lot of times, I think a lot of times we learn things. Like Don will say something to me about my Studio One or something, how to do something, and he'll say it, and I don't. It just doesn't sink, and he knows it doesn't sink, and he finds another way to say it. And eventually, usually months down the road, I go, "Ow!" And I think we have those "ow" moments all the time,
Mhm.
long after we've heard the lesson that the teacher had hoped would produce an immediate "ow" moment,
Right.
and I think part of the actor's, life and experience is recognizing somewhere along the way that what you're doing now is exactly what you were asked to do
Yeah.
15 years ago by
Yes.
whoever your
Yes.
coach was.
Yeah.
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 Oh, damn it, they were right.
Yeah. We go through that as a musician too.
Yeah.
I remember being 25 and going, "Ah, that's what he told me 8 years ago." Now,
Yeah.
I mean, I actually experienced it as opposed to the theory of it. And that's,
Mhm.
similar to what you're saying there. And
Don, if we could, let's go back to Claire's question so we
Oh,
can
yeah.
get it before it gets too far in the queue there.
got it. So I have a
Okay.
very random question. Are there ever callbacks for audiobooks? Does casting ever have narrators send second samples of audio?
What's your experience?
My experience is very rarely, but it has happened. It there've been some indie authors, who I was contracting with directly who sometimes wanted to hear because they would have maybe, like, a ton of accents or something, and they just wanted to make sure that I could do everything in the book. I remember one that I went, for, um he didn't wanna waste everybody's time. This just on ACX. He didn't wanna waste everybody's time by putting up a massive audition, just had a very short it was probably like 3-minute audition. And he reached back out to me. He was like, your audition was really good. The rate you quoted was was one of the higher ones, but he was like, "Well, I see why you quote that rate." But before we go forward, we have all of these, I've got all these characters with different accents, and the ones I'm really worried about, he had a bunch of, uh, characters who either lived in or came from Yemen. He was like, "I wanna make sure that you can voice them well." I was like, "Yeah, you would wanna make sure of that."
Yeah, that'd be easy
Um,
for most of us.
so luckily, I had, uh
You grew up there, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, luckily, I was in class with Amanda Quaid, at that very time, and I was equipped to go out there and study the accent and figure out how to delineate the different characters, and then I sent back again. It was short, it was maybe 2.5 minutes, but it was a scene with 5 or 6 different Yemeni characters talking, because he wanted to make sure that I could do it, could differentiate them as legitimate characters and not just as, the one accent. Um, and I booked the gig. Um, so
I
it's happened that one it happens rarely. That's been my experience.
Generally, because most of the audiobook that you're doing is gonna be self-directed,
Mhm.
they want you to make the choice at the top. Now, they may talk to you and say, once you get the gig, they may talk to you about the characters, some choices, some performance notes, by and large, I know when I work for like bigger publishers, it's just here's a book, you want to do it, and I do it. But I have almost every audition I ever send, whether it's from Ahab, everything. I always say, here's my audition. Listen, if you'd like to hear a different take or have a different idea other than the one I'm giving you, please let me know. I'm happy to do a second read for you. I almost always offer it. It rarely is taken up, but I always offer it. Once in a while, they'll say, Johnny, we really like you. Do you think you could come at this again with, if it's a job, let's say between me and Max and Don, and they say, can you guys, we need you to do it. Can you have this attitude? And generally it's not a different, a different accent so much as it is a different attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you get the script, you're certainly haven't read the book. You're not aware of what the character, where he's coming from, what's happened.
Yeah.
Is a prelude to that moment. So they may say, listen, the guy's really sad because, or he's really happy because, can you give us that kind of style? And they want to see that. That's happened, but it's rare. Most of the times they just anticipate that you're actor enough to play it once you know, because you may play, the audition you do may have nothing to do with what's really happening in the scene. You may be told, because you get a page and a half and you may be absolutely wrong on all the choices you made because you have nothing to base the choice on.
Yeah, there's
So
no
they just let you
backstory.
know it. So that happens a lot, I think.
Okay. So Chris has a question here. What do you see as the most profitable genre of books to narrate?
Genre.
See,
I
that's
don't.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're quiet because my experience has been that it isn't, that a book in one genre will pay different than a book in another genre. Like, I don't get people saying, well, since this is a thriller, we're only going to pay you this amount of money.
Yeah.
But when you did the the nonfiction book about the history of trains or whatever, we'll pay you a lot more. I think there are genres where there's more work to be had and more books to be had
I'm gonna guess
than
that's
others.
the take on it. So what if I were gonna go after a genre that had the most opportunity? Do you have any ideas on that?
Well, it also depend on who you are and who your voice is. Like for me, I don't think there's a lot of opportunities in cowboy fiction. Like Western. It's just there's a lot of narrators are out there whose voices sound like a leather saddle soaked in whiskey, and those jobs should go to them.
Okay.
I think I think the most profitable book to narrate, I suppose, is a big first release for a major, big 5 publisher.
Mhm.
Mostly because it's not just the genre; it's the publisher and what the budget is for the book. A lot of us don't understand what the publisher has to deal with. Let's say it's Macmillan or Simon anybody, Harper, and they've got a huge backlist. Well, some of those backlisted titles will go through secondary publishers. They won't necessarily be a Harper release. It may go through Elgin or Dion or someone. Nothing wrong, but generally it's a smaller budget. So when you talk about money, they make an offer. Hey, Max, will you do this book? I can give you $220 an hour. Max says, love to do it. I can fit it in my schedule. Is there room in the budget for 250 or whatever his rate wants to be? And then you can discuss. I think a lot of us we're so excited to get a gig, we forget we can negotiate the rate. But two things on that. One, you have to be willing to be reasonable because publisher has a given budget for a book.
Yep.
If it's a book on, the history of photosynthesis, people aren't going to necessarily, it's not going to be a big seller. There's only so much money versus last year's big book, James. That's got, a big budget. But if you say, I want this much, they say we can do it, or they say we can't. Then you have to decide. All right. And generally there's some agreements. I'll do it for you because I really want to, I've said this, I really want to do the book. It's below my rate. I'll do it for you, but can we get back to my rate on our next project or something like that? And generally they're pretty good about that. But I'm not certain there's any genre that in and of itself pays more than another genre. For a long time, I know that romance, erotica were paying less than. And I know that female narrators were getting less than. And I think that's been addressed and fixed for the most part. There's no reason in a multicast that
No.
a female makes less than a male. And there's no
No, it's
reason for
awful.
a genre to make less. It's all what's in the budget of the book.
Yeah.
But there is, however, if you get Scott Brick or Dion Graham or Johnny Heller, get some, they're probably going to make more than you.
Yeah.
Because of the notoriety and the
Mhm.
experience. But that's not genre related. at all. In terms of genre, I'm not sure there's anything that makes more than another. But you can negotiate and should negotiate. But as Sean Pratt says, and Scott Brick says so often, if you have to be willing to use the power of no. Sean has a whole thing on that, which I'm going to bring up later about how to use no. Because if Don wants to hire one of us for a book and he's only going to offer $190, I'll say no. And I have to be willing to say no and walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I get to come back and say, "Heesh, I really wanted one of you two to do it. So would you do it at 2.25 or whatever?"
See, and
I'm
that's when they
hopefully going
go.
to come back and say, I'm going to try to get the budget up to something that you will say yes, or I'm going to, go find a beginner and it's not going to be as good. Whatever. I mean, there's
Yeah.
they have to make that choice too, and sometimes they'll go up, sometimes they won't. Um,
Yep.
uh, so, Max, a specific question for you. How do you
Mm.
differentiate between numerous characters in a very specific accent that you're not fluent in?
Wow, Ray, I love that question. I mean, well, I can tell you that for that book that I was talking about, I found just on YouTube, I found a bunch of different videos of people with the accent that I needed speaking. And I tried to listen to them and pay attention to differences that I would hear. And I picked up, for example, that, you know, uh, people who were newer to English tended to maybe sort of hit certain consonants harder, and others who were more comfortable with it sort of spoke a different way. There's also, there's a lot more to character than an accent. You know, there's the
Wait a minute.
psychology,
Wait a minute.
how a person thinks,
What the Sam
how old
hell?
are they, how young are they,
John,
how do they, there's, going way back to my early theater training days. There's animal work. Sometimes certain characters remind you of a snake or a bear or a cat, and an accent is a very one important piece, but only one piece of who a character is and how you play him.
and I mean, simple things like the tempo that somebody speaks. I'm always
Mhm.
talking fast a lot of times, and Johnny is a little more laid back. And if we were doing the same voice, quote unquote, we would do it totally different because I would be ripping through it faster, and he'd be more in the character appropriate. But whatever, there's so many other things. It's like volume. I think people miss it. They think they have to shout into a mic because the book says she shouted. It's like,
Yeah.
no,
Mhm.
she shouted because it was written that way on paper, and they have to assign an emotion to it and give you. But when you're performing it, the word she shouted really means she was intense.
Mhm.
And good actors will see that in a minute and realize, oh, the word she shouted does not mean she is going to yell at the top of her lungs. She is going to have an emotion, and you guys will play the emotion, not play the shout. And I think that's something the newer
Yeah.
people don't see, because they always come back and ask me, every time I shout in my mic, something doesn't work. It's like, well, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. That's not necessarily acting. That's playing what someone wrote. Anyway, so
Sorry, my phone just went off. Did you guys hear that?
no, I missed it.
Ah,
No.
it went
Cool.
I didn't know it was gonna happen. Oh, well.
All right, yeah, but weird stuff happens. I'll bet you have a dog in the room, right?
Actually, he didn't come in yet.
Oh, okay. Mine's not in with me either. So, Matt, what do you have coming up that sounds kind of cool? Do you have things that are on the horizon that you're excited about?
Oh, yeah, I'm in the middle of, I'm narrating a really fun, horror book for Fright Night Audio, that, I'm about a third of the way through it, and after we're done, I'm gonna probably drink some tea and get back to it, but that's a lot of fun, and I'm so happy. I love the horror genre.
So, what makes that special compared to doing, children's theater? I
Oh
mean, they're the
gosh,
same, right?
they're completely the same.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Um, uh, well, I mean, the thing that I love about the horror genre is that there are some parts of life that are awful, and there are some parts of life that are horrible.
Wow.
And the genre, like, you can explore certain kinds of stories and certain kinds of experiences in that genre, in a really visceral, um, creative way that other genres, maybe don't give you the freedom to explore as deeply. So that's why I love it.
And do you go watch other? I mean, do you listen to other people doing that in order to, get ideas, or are you kind of
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think it's important for an audiobook narrator to listen to audiobooks. Know
what a
know
concept?
yeah, I know. Who thought? Know the industry you're in, and know what people who work a lot do, and listen to people whose work you really admire in different genres. But you also have to be you. Like, I can't be trying to copy Johnny. I can't be trying to copy anybody when I'm narrating. I have to be me, and I have to express the way that I express, and I trust it's going to be informed by my staying in touch with our industry, and with the work of other talented narrators. Yeah, I can't be thinking about copying anybody, because then I'm not going to be honestly connected to the text as an actor.
When you talk about copying something, because we also mentioned earlier something about accents, and you mentioned what's her name? Just popped out of my head.
Amanda Quaid.
Amanda. So
Yeah.
she's great. There's some other great accents. Steve Corona's great at act. There's
Oh,
people you
yeah.
can study with. One thing I found when you're trying to do an accent, I always find if you find this is how I do it. If you go to YouTube and find like a comedian or somebody who's doing that accent in the bit, they've already honed in on the buzzwords that get you into the sound.
Mhm.
They've already found it. So sometimes for me, instead of going to, um, oh, I don't know, a French guy,
Yeah.
an actual French guy talking, I'll do Clouseau, or find someone doing this French takeoff because they've already landed on what made it sound right for them. And
Mhm.
that seems to help me more than the accent itself. You can look at Pepe Le Pew versus President Macron. I find that helpful when you look for accents because you don't have to be dead on so
Yeah.
much as you need to indicate the accent.
Yeah. In fact,
Because if you can't do 100% of the accent, some people can't. If he said in his British accent or his Jamaican accent or whatever, you've got to do something.
mhm.
So you need to at least be able to dance around it so it sounds enough Jamaican or enough British or enough whatever
Yeah.
it is to pass muster.
And sometimes you can't do
Yeah,
it,
so that's yeah.
like, what's the word? You can't do it full on realistically sometimes,
Right.
because, a screen actor, when you're watching somebody on screen or you're watching somebody on stage, you can watch their mouth move. And we get an enormous amount of information from watching people's faces as they're
Right.
talking. And in our medium, we don't have any of that. And, if you're doing a French guy, and, the th and the turn into and at a certain point, it becomes unintelligible
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if you can't, and you nobody in an audiobook wants to go, "I have to rewind. What were they saying?" Yeah, yeah, sometimes you do have to
There's no
pull
subtitles
back
for
on
audiobooks, yeah.
accuracy for the sake of, clarity and communication.
And I also think in terms of you listening to if you're doing accents, I believe that you can do. Go ahead and start by believing you can do it instead of believing you can't. That's one helpful thing. The second thing is stop judging yourself against, in American television and motion pictures, um, there's tons of Brits and Australians playing Americans.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, if it weren't for Brits and Australians, there'd be no American television at all. Um, and we don't give a rat's ass. We let every British actor go ahead and do American. So that's fine. Whether it is or isn't, we don't even care. We just, of course they can do it. They're British.
Mm.
And yet, when we make the flip and try and do British or New Zealand or Australian or Irish, whatever, harshly judged,
Yeah.
unfairly judged. And I don't know what it's about. It's not quite fair because I don't think as many of us suck at it as one would suspect given
No.
what one reads. We're not all that bad. So I think one of the things you have to think about when you approach accents is not how difficult it is, but how facile you are with it. It's
Mhm.
just sounds coming from a different place. And as Max said earlier, the character's in the moment, whether he's speaking Spanish, French, British, Australian, whatever emotional feeling, that's what the audience is going to clue into.
Yeah.
That's the key for you. So be aware of that and don't beat yourself up too much. If you cannot do it, then you've got to then work at it. Work with a coach who can help you do it. But don't beat yourself up too much about that. The accents are there. You can find them.
Yeah,
And
but
generally, you can do it passing enough. We've already suspended our belief. When
Right.
Max does this horror book he's doing, it's fiction. Yes, it's not a true story.
So far as I know, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
are you playing men and women?
Mhm.
See, and I'm willing to accept that. And I think we always forget the audience in any kind of theatrical experience already suspended their belief. They're ready to go with you.
Yeah.
Max is reading Max and he's reading Mary and Susan too. And it's okay. And if Susan's French, okay. Is it the best French accent? No, but it's okay. I got it. I know what he's doing. So the story's the thing, I think. I thought I'd say that for people who lost their crap out there.
Well, and I think, do you go out of the booth totally scared? I mean, are you
What?
feeling when you're in the middle of doing a real intense horror
Oh,
thing, and
Mhm.
there's a moment that just totally comes out at the audience, and you know that you just got them at that point because the story just went a different direction. How does that? Are you a
Oh,
method actor?
well, okay. I could get on a soapbox about that word. I think
That's Go for it.
people have no, I think people I mean, like, almost every kind of acting training that comes out of the American tradition is method acting. People have, read press clippings of actors who, "Only talk to me by the name of the character," and sort of say, "Oh, that's method." Um, but no, I mean, the method is just a it's just a way of trying to spark your imagination and spark your emotional connection to the material. So yeah, 100%, I'm a method actor. Um, yeah, all the time, I'll, be going through something in the booth, and I mean, there are times where I have to stop because I'm too worked up, and
yeah, yeah.
it's gonna interfere with my ability to be clear in telling the story, right? It doesn't matter how much I feel. It matters what the listener is gonna feel in listening to the audiobook. Um, so the degree to which, my the heightness of my emotion doesn't correlate one to one with the success of the audio recording, but for sure I'm emotionally invested in my work. I wouldn't know at least when it's good, I'm emotionally invested in it. I mean, we spend a lot of hours in here, and I will admit that there are times where I'm 3 paragraphs in, and I'm like, "Man, I was just thinking about what I need to get when I go to the grocery store later." And then you gotta rewind
Yeah.
to back to the last time that you were connected and pick it
Yep.
up.
That's so true. And a lot of people, all the people, you need to be aware of what you're doing. You're in control of that. What you just said is a big part of self-direction. Knowing when the connection's been lost,
Mhm.
knowing when something's just not right. And a lot of times, as Don said, if you ever get scared, like doing horror, do you ever scare yourself? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You can scare yourself. You can, even though you know it's coming, if you're in the moment, it's still like, "Oh, crap."
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also some things happen in a book that are emotionally that you just feel spent. You need to take a break.
Mhm.
The scene was too much.
Mhm.
Like, and any book anybody does, for a long time, I did coming of age books, so it's the idea the authors have of these kinds of books are, the kid can't become an adult until their dog, their dad, their mom, or their brother dies in some horrible fucking accident.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to bite the bullet, before you become an adult. There's it's like, come on, I'm doing this. I'm an adult now, and nobody had to die to get me here. It's like it's just nonsense. And I did Marley and Me. Remember that Marley and Me?
Yeah.
Well, when the dog died, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but Marley doesn't, live throughout the whole book. Um, just shattering. And anybody who's had a pet, anybody. I mean, thank God not everybody's had a kid had a kid die, but everybody's had a pet, probably has outlived the pet. And the pain never leaves,
Yeah.
never leaves. And so you're in these moments and you feel these moments, and I think you need to get out of the booth once you've shared that really raw, open moment. You need to take a beat, you need to get out because
Yeah.
you can't carry on in that place.
Although, do you find, Johnny, because I've certainly found, because one of the differences in this industry compared to theater or film is you're on stage, you're going through something really intense, and you walk off stage and you go to the dressing room and you're surrounded by the people who you went through it with. And film, you go through something really intense and then they they whisk you off off set and maybe you're by yourself in your trailer or wherever your area is and you have time to yourself to calm down. But I'm at home right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And I go out that door there and there's my wife and I have learned that that I have to give myself at the end of a recording day a little emotional cool down,
Yeah,
because I'll have just, in fact, it just happened the other day where I wasn't able to do that, and I had narrated a scene of, a young woman, who was trapped in a cult, and she was escaping with her little brother because, she was gonna get married off the next day, and she
right.
knew what that meant, and she needed to get out of there, and, she was making her escape, and were they gonna see her? And, her little brother doesn't really understand, and so she has to deal with him, and it's this really emotionally fraught situation, and I finished it, um, and I looked at the time, and I was like, "Oh, I gotta I have to go out and we have to have dinner because we're going to see a show. And so I got out there and I was so wired. And, my wife took one look at me. Was like, oh, please go away.
Yeah.
um,
I get
you
that
know, I,
without doing the other thing, but
yeah,
that's
That's
I
right,
know.
yeah,
I've,
yeah.
I've, I've, when I can, I've taken just an emotional cool down in my booth before, before I go back out in the
I
real
think
world.
I think it's not necessarily the end of the day, it's wherever you are in the
Yeah.
story that creates that issue, because
Yeah.
when you're on stage and have that moment, generally the playwright has given you an out.
Hmm.
The next scene, the next thing happens, and you play it a little differently because every day you're doing the show 8 days a week, so I mean, 8 shows a week, so you get used to how to play it and how to come down for it, what to do, and you try a lot of times you're in this huge emotional thing, and then it'll be, the intermission or the whatever it is, something comes in, but in an audiobook, could be chapter
Yeah.
15 of 400 chapter, you know what I mean? That's
Hmm.
something happens,
Hmm.
oh, man. So even
Yeah.
though you're not it could be 1 o'clock in the afternoon and you're gonna work till 4 or 5, you still need to take that time to so that the next scene isn't necessarily affected because the next scene is not necessarily
Mhm.
affected by that scene.
Yeah, and in fact,
What happened to the character you play here
sometimes it's a deliberate contrast.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and so to make that contrast, you can't be in that same moment, and it's human and also, I promise you the listener is taking a beat once because 'cause they're there to go, "Oh my god, I need a second, I need a second," and then they'll go back to it, and then you're coming in from a different place. So, yeah, so I think it's important to take literal breaks during that because you've gotta get yourself plugged into a whole new a whole new emotional reality.
yeah.
Because frequently the next bit in the story, who's ever telling or whatever's happening, they may not have even been aware what just happened.
so Max, I
And
know
that's what
people sometimes they go, "Well, do you spend 4 hours a day in the booth? Do you work from 9 to 4:30?" I mean,
ah,
so what's your process, when you go
Oh
approach this? Do
gosh.
you? Because like, some people are really loose about it, like, they'll
Yeah.
go until they're emotionally spent, and then they go to the gym, or some people go, "No, I do 45 minutes on and 22 minutes off," and they're hyper structured. How's your day look?
I'm one of the looser ones where I don't have, every day at 9:15, I must enter the booth for 35 minutes and then leave for 3, and, I'm not like that. I'm a little more flexible. I've certainly found just in my own experience that, I tend to be a a little less productive super early in the morning. I tend to really hit my stride, um, after 10:30 and in the afternoon, I tend to be really cooking. Um, but I also, and this I think is where, my ADHD helps me. Um, I love being in the booth and I love disappearing as an actor into a piece of text. It's my favorite thing. I could do it all day long. So if my voice is still, if I'm taking care of myself and I'm taking care of my voice and my energy and I'm stretching periodically and letting my ancient spine recover from sitting down, um, I'm delighted to go for hours at a time with occasional stretching breaks. Um, but that's just me,
Yeah.
because as you say, lots of people work different ways.
And Claire has another question for us.
Yeah,
Have any of you worked on a play and audiobook simultaneously? How was
sure.
managing that?
Well, um, it's you know, I have to make sure that the deadlines that I've promised I'm able to deliver on, because I'm not going to have the same amount of time in the booth that I'll have when I'm working on the play. Um, so I have to sort of think like how much time am I really going to have each day, and how much audio am I going to be able to produce, and set my deadline accordingly. It's worse in rehearsals, you know, because if I'm out the door at 8:30 and then I don't get back until 7 p.m., I'm probably not doing any recording that day. Um, so that's what I found the management to be, is just making sure that I'm planning my audiobook deadlines well and communicating that clearly so I don't have anybody waiting for me.
Whatever you do as an actor in this world, you need to be able to give 100% of yourself to the project you're involved in that moment.
Hmm.
So that I remember when in my earlier days when I was doing the theater in Chicago and the show would end, then I'd drive out to the suburbs to do stand-up comedy. So it was a wonder. I loved it. And I did the show. So around 10:30, I'm leaving downtown Chicago, headed out near the airport to do stand-up at some club and stuff. So that was fun. And I've done shows and I've had books to do, but you like Max said, you've got to worry out your schedule and stuff. And you have to get enough rest in there somewhere
Hmm.
that you can give everything you have to give to the project you're on. I mean, by simultaneously, of course, you don't mean at the exact same time, but
Right.
in terms of I've had more than one audiobook. Like in the morning, I may do one genre, and then in the afternoon, I'll switch to a different one. And
Hmm.
I've done that a number of times. I don't necessarily recommend it, but I can do it, and so can you. Um, it's just you have to master not only of your own schedule, but you have to know what you're about and what you're able to do.
Yeah. And I also think, to Don's point earlier, this is where training really comes, like one of the places where training really comes into play, because I'm confident that I can, do my preparation for each project and live with the choices I've made as an actor in that one project and live in that space and be there, and then step away from it and get back in touch with my other project and then live there.
Yeah,
But that's because of the training that I've had,
yeah.
that I
And
know I
Tom
can
has a
do that.
question. I don't know if it's for Max or me. Probably Max.
Do you do nonfiction at all? Do you find it easier or harder or just different than fiction?
Oh, I do plenty of nonfiction. Probably maybe like roughly a third of my titles have been nonfiction. Um, it's different. It's different. There are some things that you don't have to deal with, maybe like, your accent work doesn't tend to be as involved, but you're still a storyteller and you're still needing to make sure you communicate the story. And sometimes it's harder because,
There's no
you know,
backstory.
well,
Well,
no,
I guess
no,
there
it's
is.
all backstory,
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that makes sense.
but I've had not every nonfiction writer is like this. Obviously, there's plenty of very gifted writers of nonfiction, and then there's some writers of nonfiction whose sentences get a little long and they're a little dry and they're a little complex. And when you're reading it on the page, you can be like, "Whoa, I just read 50 words since the subject of this sentence was dropped. I need to circle back and figure out what's being talked about." And in audio, you have to find a way to make that clear from the beginning. So, sometimes the storytelling challenges are really intense in nonfiction.
I
Um,
I,
but
I
you're a,
agree.
but you're a storyteller either way, and you're an actor either way.
I absolutely agree. 'Cause I think, I mean, you're just telling the author's truth.
Hmm.
One's fiction, one's nonfiction, but people in the fiction don't know they're in a book, and I've probably done over 600 nonfiction titles, I expect, and I like it. and generally also if it's a topic that you like I just did the Last Manager, the story of Earl Weaver from the Orioles. I mean, I like stuff. I did a Western, all the kinds of things. So I like a lot of different things. There are differences between fiction and nonfiction just in the way it's written, and the different genres in those things, which brings me, I know we got 5 minutes. I want to let you guys know something. I talked to Sean Pratt, who used to live way out in Oklahoma, now lives in Delaware, or one of those states. So he's able to come to New York City. So I'm letting you know coming up, and I'll post it soon. But Sean and I are doing a fiction, nonfiction, audiobook intensive workshop weekend here in New York City, March 3rd and 4th. You can sign up for one day or both days. I think
March
it's
or
$350 for
May?
January, February, March, May.
You need to pick up there.
I have to count. I can't do it. I got to count. January, February, March, April, May 3rd and 4th. So that's a Saturday, Sunday in New York City. I'll post it in my workshop group, and then I'll post it all over the place. Sean will share it. But you can do one day for $350 or both days for $450. And we're going to mix fiction and nonfiction and talk to you about everything. So Sean and I are different in how we do things. He has a method to his madness, and I have just madness. And I think, but it's fun. And I think you have a good time. And I think that I want to let you know it's happening because I'm going to talk about things. And what have you got coming up, Max? That's big for you, because I've got some other announcements too.
Oh God! Well, I mean, there's this horror book that I'm working on. I've got a thriller series lined up. I'm super happy because just today, I signed a contract on the sequel to one of the very first books I ever did as a narrator. He reached back out to me. He had taken a little break from writing. He reached back out to me and wants me to pick up a project that I last touched probably 7 years ago. I'm
Oh,
really
wonderful.
excited. Yeah.
Yeah.
Save your files, ladies and gentlemen. Save your voice samples and save your reference
Well, I have a
material.
question for you, Max. If somebody hasn't checked out your prior work, among the books you've done, what are what's one of the favorites that you could think of that would be like, oh, here's one that I really enjoyed doing and
Man,
kind of represents me?
yeah, I don't know, because I'm like Johnny, because I like to work in all sorts of different areas. So I usually, when people ask that, I ask, "What are you interested in?" But I did a book recently that got a Sovus nomination that I was really happy about. Partly just because it's sort of nice to get that, but it's a memoir of a guy who's twice exceptional, which is a fairly recent term in educational psychology, meaning that somebody has a learning disability, so they're exceptional in that way, and they have a lot of strong intellectual gifts, so they're exceptional in another way. And the school system really isn't set up to deal with kids like that. And he wrote a memoir about what that was like. It was called Twice as Weird. And I loved doing it. And as a parent of a twice exceptional kid, it was it's a it's a it's an issue, and it's a you know sets of challenges that are near and dear to my heart. And not enough people know about it. So I'm thrilled that that's out in the world.
That's great.
I'll have that link in the chat here in just a second. Okay.
Oh, thanks.
Well, Don looks up. Let me tell you, here's something else. Don't forget, the New England Narrator Retreat is coming up October 13th to 16th. Joanne and I are working on the agenda now. I am able to tell you a couple of things. One is we're going to have those little cabins. I don't know for those of you who've been there before, you've seen those little cabins, and they had that the girls' high school field hockey team took them, but now we get to take them. So if you want a room with 4 to 6 to 8 people, it's cheaper, and you can get a place. It's it's 4 bedrooms, 2 baths. So it's kind of cool. And also, I want to let you know, we're going to have Rin Krause from Spotify. We're going to have Kai Detoli from Podium. We're going to have, I just talked to Eric Black yesterday, and he's still with the RB Media. Dreamscape has been sucked into RB Media.
Yeah.
And we want Eric back as our 10 years. He's going to come again.
Oh, great.
So, and he's still able to cast you. So it's not just some has-been you don't need, and he'll land some other gig. And also from Macmillan, Chloe Nosan, Nosan, who we always Guy Oldfield McMillan decides who on his team will join us. They've been a part of our experience, for 8 years almost, and this is our 10-year anniversary. So we got a lot going on. We're looking forward to that. And it's all good. If you haven't joined the Johnny Heller Workshop alumni page on Facebook, do it, because that's where the information goes first. That's where you can find out about what's happening and sign up for it before other people do. Don, I wanted to give you time. I know we're at the end. What are you ready to announce your big project or another day?
I'm still, I
Okay.
have not had a project like this in the last 15 years where I've been working very late and up very early. And Lisa will go, like, we haven't watched any of our, I don't know about you guys, we watch something, we'll have a series going, and we'll watch a couple episodes a week, 2-3 episodes. We've skipped that the last few weeks, other than a couple rare occasions. So anyway, we'll be in New England. I'll be there with you. I got a bunch of cool stuff happening. It's pretty wild. So we'll
Yeah, I
talk
can't
about it
wait to.
sometime when it's done. Okay.
And
So
Max, this hour flew by. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is so
Yeah,
much fun.
and we have to we'll call each other after this, but we have to have it. It's time for dinner.
Absolutely.
There's a new joint we got to go to. It's really
Oh,
cool.
okay, good.
And then and Claire, who's listening, and she's in the audience. Claire, I'm working with you in about half an hour. Can you make it 45 minutes? I have to take the dogs out, so I'm hoping you'll. So more, instead of 2:30, more like 2:45. I'll be there because the dogs got to go.
it's cool that we get the schedule on the show.
That's
So,
right. Well, she's right there.
yeah, it's very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, Max, thanks for being our guest here tonight. And Johnny, I'm happy you're feeling a whole lot better. And for everybody out
And
there in
Ann
the audience,
Richardson next week, everybody.
yeah, be sure to like, be sure to subscribe. Comments after the show are super helpful. And of course, you can share this in other groups that you're in. And as always, we're happy you're here. And we'll see you again on the wires. You have a great